A ceasefire was announced. Markets surged. Oil prices dropped. And for the first time in 40 days, the world exhaled. Peace and safety. That's what the headline said. Both sides claimed victory. Leaders shook hands through screens. And for a moment, just a moment, it felt like the worst was over. But here's what stopped me. Almost 2,000 years ago, a man writing from a Christ-following community. In the Roman Empire, a man named Paul put down a warning. That sounds like it was written this week. He said when they say peace and safety, that's when you need to pay the closest attention. And he wasn't the only one. Today, we're opening not one, not two, but 4 passages from 4 different authors, written centuries apart. And every single one of them says the same thing. By the end of this video, you'll understand a pattern that most people have never seen. And you'll never read a ceasefire headline the same way again. Let's open the scroll. Our anchor text today comes from the Apostle Paul, 1 Thessalonians, chapter 5. This letter was written around 51 AD to a young community of believers in Thessalonica, a major commercial port in the Roman Empire. These were people living under occupation, surrounded by uncertainty. And they had one burning question: when is the Lord coming back? Paul doesn't give them a date. He gives them something far more valuable, a pattern to watch for. Listen carefully. Verse 1, "But of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you." He's saying you already know what you need to know. Verse 2, "For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night, not with a trumpet, not with a warning, like a thief." Now look at what comes next. Verse 3, and this is the line that is echoed across 2 millennia, "For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." Now let that sit for a moment. Paul is not predicting a specific war. He's describing something deeper, a human tendency. The moment we say, we're safe now, that is the moment of greatest vulnerability. And notice the image he uses: labor pains. They don't come when you expect them. They come when the body has been saying, everything is fine. And then, without warning, the whole world changes. But here's what most people miss. Paul wasn't inventing this idea. He was drawing from a thread that runs through the entire Old Testament. The prophet Jeremiah, writing 600 years before Paul, warned Israel with almost identical words. Chapter 6, verse 14. "They have healed also the hurt of the daughter of my people slightly, saying, peace, peace, when there is no peace." And Ezekiel, a contemporary of Jeremiah, took the same warning and added an image that will stay with you. He called it whitewashing a flimsy wall. And the prophet Daniel, centuries before all of them, described a ruler who would, by peace, destroy many. Now, I want to be clear, we're exploring this as students of history and scripture. This isn't about predicting the future. This is about understanding patterns. And what we find is remarkable. 4 authors, 4 centuries, 1 warning, and to understand why they all saw the same thing, we need to go back 2,400 years to a king the ancient Jews called the Madman. The year is 175 BC. The great empire of Alexander has been dead for a century and a half, carved into 4 rival kingdoms by his generals. One of those kingdoms, the Seleucid Empire, stretches from modern Turkey to the borders of India. And a new king is about to take the throne. His name is Antiochus. He calls himself Epiphanes, God made manifest. But the people who know him best call him something else. Epiphanes, the madman. Now here's what makes Antiochus relevant to us today. He didn't seize the throne by force. He didn't march an army into the capital. He used something far more effective. He used diplomacy, flattery, promises. The ancient historian Josephus tells us Antiochus presented himself as a friend of peace. A reasonable man who only wanted stability. He won over the kings of Pergamus through charm. The Syrians accepted him without resistance. He walked into power on a red carpet of words. And then once he had power, everything changed. In 168 BC, Antiochus marched into Jerusalem. He outlawed the Jewish faith entirely. No Sabbath, no circumcision, no Torah. Owning a sacred scroll became a death sentence. He erected a statue of Zeus inside the holy temple and slaughtered a pig on the altar. The Jewish sources call this the abomination of desolation. Tens of thousands died, and the man who had entered through the door of peace became the architect of one of the most devastating persecutions in Israel's history. And here's the part that should give you chills. The prophet Daniel described this 350 years before it happened. Daniel chapter 8, verse 25. And through his policy also, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. And he shall magnify himself in his heart. And by peace shall destroy many. By peace shall destroy many. Daniel saw a ruler who would weaponize diplomacy itself. And history proved him right centuries later. But stay with me, because what comes next changes everything. Antiochus is not the only example. This pattern, peace as a weapon, runs through the ancient world like a fault line. In 446 BC, Athens and Sparta signed what they called the 30 Years' Peace. It was supposed to end a generation of warfare between the two greatest powers in Greece. Both sides celebrated. Both sides called it a new era. The peace lasted 15 years. And when it broke, what followed was the Peloponnesian War, one of the most devastating conflicts the ancient world had ever seen. A war that destroyed Athens and left Greece so weakened that within decades, it was swallowed by Macedon. And 60 years after that, Sparta made its own deal, this time with Persia. The Peace of Antiochus, 386 BC. And this one is especially striking because of what Persia got in return. In exchange for ending a war, Sparta handed the Greek cities of Asia Minor to Persian control. The ancient scholar Mikhail Gasparov wrote that the Persian king had succeeded where Xerxes had failed. He was giving orders in Greece like it was his without bringing in a single soldier. Persia conquered Greece not with armies, but with a peace treaty. Now let's go deeper. Because while empires were signing treaties that crumbled, two prophets in Israel were watching the same pattern unfold in real time. Around 600 BC, the kingdom of Judah was surrounded. Babylon was rising. Egypt was fading. And the question on everyone's lips was, will Jerusalem survive? The religious leaders said yes. The court prophets said yes. Peace, peace, they told the people. God is with us. The temple stands. Nothing can touch Jerusalem. And the people believed them. Why wouldn't they? It was exactly what they wanted to hear. But two men disagreed. Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 14 wrote with raw frustration, "They have healed the hurt of my people slightly, saying, peace, peace, and there is no peace." The wound is deep. He was saying, and they're putting a bandage on a broken bone. And Ezekiel, across the river in exile, used an image that cuts even deeper. Chapter 13, verse 10. Because they have seduced my people, saying, peace, and there was no peace. And one built up a wall, and lo, others daubed it with untempered mortar. In modern language, someone builds a flimsy wall, and the false prophets rush in to paint it white so it looks solid. But Ezekiel says, when the storm comes, when the rain falls and the wind blows, that wall is coming down, and everyone standing behind it will be buried. And here's what happened. In 586 BC, within years of Jeremiah's warning, Nebuchadnezzar's army broke through the walls of Jerusalem. The temple was burned. The people were dragged into exile. The false prophets who had promised peace were silenced by the very destruction they swore would never come. The whitewashed wall came down. So now step back with me and look at what we have. Daniel, writing from Babylon, saw a future ruler who would use peace as a weapon. 350 years later, Antiochus did exactly that. Jeremiah and Ezekiel, writing from either side of Jerusalem's fall, both identified the same deadly pattern. The moment the word peace becomes a sedative rather than a reality. And then Paul, writing 500 years after Jeremiah, from a completely different context, in a completely different language. Greek, instead of Hebrew, picks up the same thread and weaves it into a warning for all time. 4 voices, 1 pattern. And this is the part that'll make you put your phone down. Because when we overlay this ancient pattern onto the events of the last 72 hours, the parallels are not subtle. Now let's overlay these 2 timelines. On April 8th, 2026, a ceasefire was announced between the United States and Iran. After 40 days of conflict strikes, counterstrikes, a global energy crisis, both sides agreed to a 2-week pause. Markets surged, oil prices fell. Leaders on both sides declared victory. And the word that echoed across every news network on earth was the same word Jeremiah warned about 2,600 years ago, peace. The first parallel, Paul wrote, "When they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them. Now consider this. Within hours of the ceasefire announcement, both the United States and Iran claimed total victory. One side said all military objectives had been met. The other side said the enemy had been humiliated and defeated. Both sides used the word peace. Both sides used the word safety. And yet on the same day that word was spoken, over 200 people were killed. In a separate wave of strikes that one side said was not covered by the agreement, the ceasefire was announced, and the destruction continued. Peace was declared, and people died. Remember Jeremiah, they have healed the hurt of my people slightly? Slightly. That word hits different now. A 2-week pause after 40 days of war. A ceasefire that one side says includes a neighboring country, and the other side says does not. An agreement built on what analysts are calling, and I want you to hear this phrase, a deep trust deficit. Jeremiah would recognize this in an instant. A bandage on a broken bone. The second parallel, Daniel wrote, "By peace shall destroy many." Now here's where the map speaks. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage of water between Iran and Oman, carries roughly 20% of the world's oil supply. Before this conflict, over 100 ships passed through it every single day. When the war began, Iran effectively closed the strait. Global energy prices exploded. Countries across Asia declared energy emergencies. And then came the ceasefire, and with it, the promise that the strait would reopen. But here's what actually happened. The day after the ceasefire was announced, only 2 ships passed through the strait, and neither of them was carrying oil. Shipping executives told reporters they had no contact with the authorities about how to safely transit. One side said the strait was open. The other side said passage required coordination with its armed forces. And within hours, reports emerged that oil tanker traffic had been halted again because the conflict in a neighboring country had not stopped. The word open was spoken, but the strait remained, for all practical purposes, closed. the promise of peace and the reality of control. Daniel saw this pattern 24 centuries ago. Now I need you to really focus here, because the third parallel is the one that ties everything together. The third parallel. Ezekiel said the false prophets were whitewashing a flimsy wall, building something that looked strong on the outside but had no foundation. Now consider the foundation of this ceasefire. 2 weeks, that's the time frame. A 2-week pause, brokered by a third country, between two nations that have been adversaries for over 4 decades. One side's 10-point proposal includes the withdrawal of all foreign military forces from the region and the lifting of all sanctions. The other side demands the complete surrender of nuclear materials and the unconditional opening of a critical waterway. These are not two sides inching toward common ground. These are two sides standing on opposite cliffs, agreeing only to stop throwing rocks for 14 days. And this is where it all converges. 4 authors: Paul, Daniel, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, written across a span of over 600 years, in different languages, from different cities, under different empires. Paul wrote from the Roman world. Daniel wrote from Babylonian exile. Jeremiah wrote from a Jerusalem about to burn. Ezekiel wrote from a refugee camp by the river Chebar. And yet every single one of them identified the same fault line in human history. The moment peace becomes a word instead of a reality. The moment leaders say, "It's over," while the ground is still shaking. The moment we stop watching because someone told us it was safe to sleep. That is the pattern? Not a prediction, not a date on a calendar, a pattern. And patterns, by their nature, repeat. But the real question isn't whether this was seen before. The real question is what it means for you. And for that, we need to read the part of Paul's letter that almost nobody talks about. Most people know 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 3. Peace and safety, sudden destruction. It gets quoted in sermons, in documentaries, in comment sections. But almost nobody keeps reading. And what Paul says next is the whole point. Verse 4. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. You are not in darkness. Do you hear that Paul isn't saying be afraid? He's saying you are different. Verse 5. Ye are all the children of light and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Children of light. That's what he calls them. Not victims, not targets, not people cowering in corners waiting for the sky to fall. Children of light. People who see clearly even when the world is dark. And then verse 6, and this is the verse I want you to carry with you when you leave this video. Therefore, let us not sleep, as do others, but let us watch and be sober. Watch and be sober. Not panic and be afraid. Not run and hide. Watch. Be clear-eyed. Be present. Be aware. That is the entire message of this passage, and it's the part that gets lost every single time. Someone quotes verse 3 without reading verse 6. The pattern of false peace is not a reason to lose hope. It's a reason to sharpen your vision, to stop putting your security in headlines, to stop exhaling every time someone signs a piece of paper, and to start asking a deeper question: where does my real peace come from? Because here's what 4 prophets across 6 centuries are really telling us. Peace is not a ceasefire. Peace is not a headline. Peace is not the absence of missiles or the reopening of a shipping lane. Real peace, the kind that doesn't crumble when the storm hits, doesn't come from treaties between nations. It comes from something deeper, something that Ezekiel would say is not a whitewashed wall, but a foundation that can hold. And that foundation, according to every voice we've heard today, is not built by human hands. At the beginning of this video, I told you the world exhaled. Markets surged, headlines said peace. And for a moment, it felt like everything was going to be okay. but 4 ancient voices separated by centuries, writing in different languages, from different continents, all saw the same thing. They saw that the most dangerous moment isn't when the conflict is raging. It's when someone says it's over and you believe them without looking deeper. But that's not where the story ends. Because Paul didn't leave the Thessalonians in fear. He left them in light. Ye are all the children of light. You are not in darkness. You are equipped. You are awake. And being awake doesn't mean being anxious. It means being anchored in something that no ceasefire can give you, and no war can take away. Before you go, I want to pray over you. Lord, I pray for every person hearing this right now, wherever they are. Stuck in traffic with this playing through their speakers, lying in bed scrolling through headlines they wish they hadn't read, standing in a kitchen wondering what this world is coming to, I pray you meet them right where they are. We've walked through the words of Paul and Daniel, Jeremiah and Ezekiel today. Words about peace that isn't peace. Walls that look strong but aren't. And we confess we've leaned on those walls too. We've exhaled too soon. We've called things settled that we're still shaking. But you don't whitewash. You build on rock. So give us eyes that stay open, not anxious eyes, awake eyes, children of light eyes. And let the peace we carry out of this video be the kind no headline can take from us. In your name, amen. If this video opened your eyes to something you hadn't seen before, hit subscribe and turn on that bell. This channel exists because people like you believe that ancient wisdom still has something to say to a modern world. And I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments which of the 4 passages we covered today hit you the hardest. Was it Paul's warning, Daniel's prophecy, Jeremiah's frustration, or Ezekiel's whitewashed wall? Drop it below. I read every single one. And next time on Scrolls of Fire, we're traveling to a land the Bible names by description, not by name. A land of rivers, a land of gold, a land where a queen carried gifts so extraordinary that Solomon himself was overwhelmed. And what she may have carried home with her has been the subject of a mystery for 3,000 years. You don't want to miss it.